Let's get to the topic here because there's a lot going on. A lot of things are changing, no pun intended. Rob Shelsky is an avid and eclectic writer on both fiction and nonfiction and averages about 4,000 words a day. Rob, with a degree in science, has written a large number of factual articles for several scientific fiction magazines and publications, with a focus on paranormal investigation. So essentially, he's perfect for the show because the show's catchline is where science fiction meets science fact. He's written several nonfiction books on the topics of UFOs and has also delved into the subject of time travel, including his latest book, Time Travel Invasion. His website is robshelsky.blogspot.com, and one of the things we've been getting into over the past year is the Mandela Effect. And every time I look into it, I think, well, maybe people are just remembering things wrong, like Sex in the City and Sex and the City. I've always remembered it as Sex and the City because she was a columnist, and the name of her column was Sex and the City, at least from what I remember. It's been a long time ago. I never really watched the series. It was one of those things that you watched it with your girlfriend because she wanted to watch it, and you wanted to watch something with her because she just got done watching Terminator with you. You know, that kind of deal. But I never got into Sex and the City. But you know what's funny? We put together a top 5 Mandela Effect video, and we included some proofs. One of those proofs, and I don't want to give away the video, but one of the proofs is the Forrest Gump, where he says life was like a box of chocolates, and everybody remembers that life is like a box of chocolates, where he's sitting down on the bench. Well, if you turn on the captions on the video, we play a video of Tom Hanks like 10 years later, 20 years later, or something like that on Saturday Night Live, where he's going through in front of a green screen and doing a bunch of his famous scenes from his different movies. And one of them is Forrest Gump. And he says, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And he's sitting on the bench with a box of chocolates. So we use that as like a proof, like, hey, look, Tom Hanks remembers saying life is like a box of chocolates. What's going on here? Well, if you turn on the captions on YouTube, you'll see that even YouTube decodes it as life is like a box of chocolates on the one that he did on Saturday Night Live, not on the original, but on the one Saturday Night Live, because he's using that accent. And as Lucky pointed out, he's not very good at the accent. So when you listen to it, you're like, did he say was? Did he say is with a drawl? You know, what's going on here? And even slowing it down confuses you a little more, but you swear you hear is, but you listen to it 10 times over, then it turns into was, and you're like, what the heck is going on here? But the Google bot that picks up on the captions translated it as is. I thought that was pretty cool. There's many, many, many different Mandela Effect and changes going on right now, so I would love to get Rob's take on the time travel invasion. Rob, how are you doing, sir?
Hi, how are you doing?
Very good.
Doing
Thank you very
great.
much for joining us once again. Very interesting time that we're living in. Things are constantly changing. Like I said, no pun intended. What are your thoughts on this very fluctuating manner?
I think it's creepy. If you want to know the truth.
It is strange. You know what? Somebody told me the other day. He said, "There's no way that we've developed time travel, so this Mandela effect can't be real." I said, "Look, it doesn't matter if we've developed time travel. What matters is can time travel be developed? Even if it's 10,000 years from now, when it's developed is completely irrelevant."
Well, exactly. I mean, if anyone, anytime in the future, developed time travel, then we've history probably. So all someone has to do is sometime in the next 3 trillion years of the life of the universe is to come up with time travel. And the truth of the matter is, I think it's already been done. That's the contention of my book, Time Travel Invasion. I really do believe it has already been done, and we are suffering the manifestations. Now, as to whether the Mandela effect is a product of time travel, a so-called glitch, or whether it's a product of something else, I'm not sure. The Mandela effect all seems to have started from my research in the 1990s. Some people pin it right down to 1993, but I'm not sure I agree with that. Excuse me. But I have my own theories as to what might have caused it.
Well, I definitely want to get into that here in just a moment. I want to share with you first our first realization of the Mandela Effect. It was back in 2009 or early 2010. I was filling up my water bottles at a reverse osmosis facility. Cherie we had just met. She had just come with me to the facility just a couple of weeks prior, and we get there and the place is completely gone. And I said, you know what? This is weird. This is strange. And then we're about a year later, we're driving in right near our house in Denver, and we pass by this series of motels, and we're like, there's no motels here. That's never happened. So a friend of mine flies in, Frank Castle, who's another host here on the station. He flies in, and he was looking for a hotel. And I said, there's a ton of hotels around here. And he said, well, my wife's a travel agent. She can't find anything. And I said, well, just stay at my house. It's no problem. So he comes over, and we go down to those hotels so I can show him. And he goes, that's weird. There's no record of these hotels at all. So there's a little Denny's in the parking lot. So we sit down in the Denny's, and he starts talking to the waitress and asks, do you know when these hotels were built? And she goes, I don't know. They just seem to appear one day out of nowhere.
Well, that's pretty creepy too. It's scary to me because it means our reality is not what we think it is, and also it means that our reality is unreliable. And if that's so, what about everything that we hold dear and that we consider solid? And we used to say terra firma, the ground beneath your feet was solid ground. But if reality is not solid, then we don't live on terra firma anymore. We live in sort of a void, if you will. And what happens to your loved ones? Can they just come and go just like these hotels do?
I think some people have actually reported, and this could be a fake story, but I heard that some people were reporting that they wake up one morning and they've got a wife and kids and they don't remember them.
I have read forum posts to that to that effect. I can't verify these though, obviously.
Well, there is one famous one. That's Lorena Garcia. She woke up in her apartment and noticed minor changes like the color of her bedspread, some of the tchotchkes she had lying around the apartment. But then it got worse. She went to work, and the department she'd always remembered working in didn't recognize her, didn't know her. They said she did work at the building, but she worked over on the other side in a completely different department doing a different job. She went to contact her boyfriend and couldn't find any trace of him. Instead, she found she was still with her old boyfriend, who she had broken up with 7 months before. She was so panicked, she hired a private detective. He couldn't find anything. Neither the new boyfriend or his son appears to ever have existed at all, as if they never were. She remembered her sister having a shoulder operation a few months before. Her sister had no memory of it and no scar. And she was so upset, she thought she was going crazy. She went to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist just said, well, perhaps you're hallucinating, but you seem sane otherwise. We don't know what's going on. But to this day, she is insistent that this is not her reality, and she's even posted a plea on the internet asking people if they had any information about this boyfriend or anything like this to please let her know. She's desperate.
That is insane. It's crazy to think about. I mean, imagine being in that situation. I couldn't imagine if the people around me that I love just all of a sudden disappeared. What a bizarre situation to be in. But in this day and age, I don't put it past whatever's happening to create things like this. You stated that it goes all the way back to the 90s. I don't remember any changes in the 90s. I thought that it started sometime around 2008, but I may be wrong about that. So take us away down that road, please.
Sure. There's an odd thing about Mandela Effect. It seems to not always affect movies, film. Sometimes in films, you'll see things that haven't changed or that are different. The movie, in fact, in your video that you put on YouTube, which is very well done, by the way, I had to watch it all the way through.
Thank you.
Dazed and Confused. That movie was 1993, I believe. And in it, it shows a large island off the coast of Australia to the southwest of it. It's not the only one. As your video also pointed out, Friends also shows a landmass there, not as big and a little further south and a little more under Australia. Now, we're not talking Tasmania and New Zealand. They're there. And we're not talking Antarctica. These are something different. And as your video also pointed out, Mad Men had an episode which shows something to the southwest of Australia, but it looks amazingly like a key to me of, like for the land masses and logos and explanation. However, as one author put it, even on that key, if you blow it up, you'll see 3 mountains at the top, the highest mountain in the middle, as if somehow there's a racial memory of that having been land there. And that's why, so it's very odd that they place these keys so close to Australia. You've got this huge, vast, empty Indian Ocean just to the west. Why put it within an inch or so of the landmass of Australia? We have all this open space you can pop the thing into where there are no islands. But always this key seems to be in Australia. But these land masses in this movie show rivers, they show inlets, and they even have printing on them as if they're naming like capital cities and things. So that's very strange. You have the movie Star Wars where C-3PO was supposed to be all gold. Do you remember this being all gold?
I remember him being all gold, and as a matter of fact, we watched every single Star Wars because The Force Awakens came out. I wanted to take Cherie to see it. She's never seen the Star Wars films before, so we sat down and watched every single episode. And then 6 weeks later, it changed to Silver Leg, and we had just watched it fresh just a few weeks prior.
Well, I've just discovered a blooper video from Star Wars. I'm not sure what movie it's from because it doesn't say, but it shows C-3PO and R2-D2, and he's solid gold. Both his legs are in plain sight, and they're the same color. So which is the real C-3PO?
Well,
We're told that he always had the silver leg, but here's a blooper where he doesn't.
The photographer stated that he doesn't remember him having a silver leg, and he's come out and said, hey, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on here, because I would have adjusted my cameras to compensate for the silver leg, and we never did that. Right.
And of course, these are minor issues, although they could be indicative of something much greater, and I think they are. Something happened in the 90s that's causing this sort of event.
Before you get into that, I want to throw one more your way, and this is one that I remember about. I remember hearing about, but it's recently seemed to change back to the original. Apollo 13, Houston, we have a problem, was changed to Houston, we've had a problem, and now it's changed back to Houston, we have a problem. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I do remember this Houston, we have a problem. Myself, I didn't know that it had changed to Houston, we had a problem. That doesn't sound right to me because in every movie thing I've seen a reference to it, it was always Houston, we have a problem. But what I'm finding is different people remember things differently. I have a roommate who remembers chartreuse as being a plum reddish brown color. And a lot of people remember chartreuse as being sort of a maroonish red color. And the weird thing about all these things is when the people get it wrong, they all get it wrong the same way. This is something I insist on always repeating because it's so important. We can all get things wrong, but why are so many people getting it wrong, and they're getting it wrong the same way?
Right.
Chartreuse is, of course, a lime green.
With the Apollo 13 one, this was about a year ago. I was researching the Mandela Effect, and I went to the film clips, and it says, Houston, we've had a problem. And I was looking at it and going, wow, I can't believe they changed it. It used to be Houston, we have a problem. Now you go back to those exact same clips, and it's Houston, we have a problem. Now here's where it gets weird. I went to the original audio from the supposed real event, and the astronaut says, Houston, we've had a problem on the original audio now.
Yeah, that sort of thing changes all the time. Whatever these changes are, they seem to backtrack. And that's the oddest thing about it is when there's a change in our timeline, some minor change or big change, it sort of antedates itself back to its origin. So what I don't quite understand, and I don't think anyone does, is why in some films does the old version persist, but in the new versions, it doesn't. In Star Wars, James Earl Jones was the voice of Darth Vader. He insists that he said, Luke, I am your father. Now, he in several different interviews over several different years, he repeated that line, Luke, I am your father. He says, I remember when I said, Luke, I am your father. And he wasn't talking about the Mandela Effect. He was just talking about the movie. And yet, now they say that line doesn't exist in the movie, and it doesn't. I rewatched the movie to see, and he doesn't say that, which is amazing.
It is. Take us back to the 90s, please.
Well, again, the 90s is when all these Mandela effects seem to be traced to. Of course, they go back much further. For instance, these maps of this island on near Australia, it's a very large island, about 1/3 the size of Australia in one image, and the ones of Friends, it's smaller, but it's still 2 or 3 times the size of Tasmania. And they appear both in the 90s. All this stuff seems to go back to the 90s for some reason, but it can predate all the way back. I have made it a point to watch very, very old movies. And anytime I see a globe and it depicts that side of the Earth, I check it. And they're all the same. They all don't show that island.
You know, I am so sorry, Rob. The break is hitting us. I promise I will give you the floor uninterrupted when we get back. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back. Rob Shelsky is our guest. Time travel is the topic. It's going to be really interesting for the next hour and a half. Don't go anywhere.
Everything that is, was, and will be, eternally is, even the countless forms which are finite and perishable only in their objective, and not in their ideal form, the form which manifests itself, beyond the veil.
People in the chat room are getting involved. Ken posted, it looks like a promo DVD, no, a VHS copy of the Star Wars trilogy with C-3PO and R2-D2 in the desert from, I assume, the first one, but they were in the desert in the third one as well. And he has 2 gold legs, no silver leg there. And Mount Rushmore seems to have been changed too. Did you know about this, Sheree?
I did not.
Yeah, Donald Trump and Miley Cyrus are up there now. Not really.
That wouldn't surprise me at all.
All right, let's get back to Rob Shelsky. Rob, take us back to 1999, and I promise I will mute my microphone until you're done.
Oh, come on. Let's not promise something we can't do. Actually, you know, I find that being a MUFON field investigator, I find people talk about the Mandela effect the way people do about UFOs. You can go to any place in the country, any restaurant, any bar. Not that I hang out in bars a lot, but you can go to anywhere and start talking to people about UFOs, and everyone has a UFO story, and they've got to tell it to you. And this is because it's such a prevalent thing and so many people have seen it. And I think the Mandela effect is the same way. We all have our stories about the Mandela effect, things that we can't understand. And yes, of course, some of them are just remembering something wrongly. And a lot of people could probably remember it wrongly the same way. But the problem is that it's so consistent and so common and so often. Again, I have a lot of fear about it because I think it's the result of us fooling around with quantum computers and or CERN. A lot of people say, well, it's CERN experiments are causing a side effect, and the Quantum D company has finally got actual quantum computers online that NASA and Google are involved with, and they actually work. And I think what we're experiencing, and these came online in the 2000s, and they're getting more and more prevalent now. The first were just very miniature, I mean, not miniature, but what they could do was miniature, nothing. They could count to 5 maybe. But now they're getting much more like supercomputers. And I think there is a phenomenon known as quantum erasure, which we know as a fact is real. In quantum mechanics, quantum physics, we know this is so. And quantum erasure is where something is changed in the now, and it causes something in the past to alter. So one of the 2 owners of Quantum D has done a seminar. You can watch him on YouTube, and he says that their quantum computers are accessing quantum computers in parallel realities, perhaps an infinite number, or actually however many qubits they have in the quantum computers, how many other quantum computers they access simultaneously in alternate realities. And if we are getting quantum erasure effects in our own reality by screwing around with the split screen experiment, then they could be doing the same thing. And quantum erasure travels backwards in time. for the split screen experiment, which is the famous quantum experiment. It's an 8 nanosecond traveling into the past of a particle's information to its entangled partner. But with quantum computers on that scale, we could be going back a decade. So we started this in the 2000s, and all of a sudden in the 1990s, we're noticing some weird events.
I really did have my microphone muted, by the way.
Yes, you did.
So, I have a theory, and this theory is that we're actually inside of one of the computers. And this is an artificial reality. And that's why things keep changing, because you change one program and it changes all of reality. And it's very easy to do inside of the simulation in and of itself. And one of the things that I use to draw that conclusion is a quantum physicist was talking about how they found a computer code in the fabric of reality. But it wasn't just any computer code. It was a computer code written by a guy in the 40s named Claude Shannon. And we're finding his exact computer code written in the fabric of reality. Have you heard about this and any thoughts on that?
Yes, and it refers to string theory, which is the theory, the darling of all the physicists right now to explain the entire universe, the theory of everything. And string theory, the one scientist you're talking about, discovered that there is self-correcting error code in string theory. He came across it, and it surprised him. The odd thing about this self-correcting error code is it is the exact same algorithms, the exact same code, block linear self-correcting error code. And it is used in Google and Yahoo search engines. And what it does is when you send a stream of data, when it's downloaded, the downloading computer or server checks it against what it has in its memory banks to make sure all of the code is there. And if it's any is missing, this program, the self-correcting block linear code, replaces the missing blocks of data so that the data stream is corrected. Because anything can cause a drop in data, a solar flare, whatever, transmission from a satellite, a glitch on a telephone line, whatever. So but this is important for computer programming. It's the only way we can send data from one streams to another and make sure it arrives the way we sent it, is this block linear self-correcting code. And isn't it strange that the very fundamental matrix of the mathematics of our universe in string theory, that we have that exact same code, not something like it, not something similar, that code, computer programming.
That changes the game.
It really does.
It gets even stranger. The same quantum physicist was talking about how he took all of the data that he had collected on reality, and it was all numerical data, and he put it into a machine and spat out a graphical interface. And I don't remember the exact terminology. It was like arcanes or arcadins, something like that. I've got to go back and look it up. But he named this data set that was coming out, or the images rather. The images look exactly like what you would experience in a very, very heavy shamanic psychedelic trance. We call it hyperspace. It's this realm. I don't know if you've ever done ayahuasca or DMT and had one of those really out-of-body experiences, but it looks exactly like that hyperspace realm, which now I'm sitting here wondering, why the heck are we seeing the same thing that the computer is spitting out, and why is it spitting out the same graphical interface as hyperspace, unless this is an artificial computer program that we're living in?
Well, there's other examples too. If we are a computer program, no computer program can absolutely mirror the universe. To do that, you'd have to have all of the data of the universe. Since the universe is infinite, you're probably not going to have it. So any advanced future civilization could probably come up very close. Actually, it was Nick Bostrom who came up with the theory of us being in a simulation. And he basically said it's based on the following supposition. In the future, there are no advanced civilizations. They all wipe themselves out, number one. Number two, they exist, but they have no interest in time travel. And again, we wouldn't have time travel in that case. Or number three, it's just one of those civilizations at any point in the trillions of years to come decides to have an interest in computer simulations, then the chances are higher than medium. In fact, they're quite high. It is far more likely we are a simulation than we are not. And we very well could be a nested simulation. And again, I would recommend to people to watch the movie The 13th Floor. It's a perfect example of this idea.
Yes. in that movie, I don't want to spoil it for people, so spoiler alert just in case, but they create a simulation within a simulation, and then that causes a paradox ultimately. And that's the point where we're at now, because we're creating virtual reality and virtual worlds. If we are in a simulation and create a simulation within the simulation, it could be disastrous.
Well, the quantum erasure, if that is the cause of what's happening, it could be not that it's changing our time so much as it's blurring our timeline with adjacent timelines that are very similar. And I would refer people to the any number of time travel movies, but probably the best ones would be, actually, there's a very good new TV series called Travelers. And I would find if people might watch that, they might get a good idea of it. It has its problems. I've not seen a time travel movie yet, Loopers or whatever, where they don't run into a paradox problem and they don't resolve it well. Even Loopers, which I really enjoyed at the end, had a paradox problem, but I won't go into that. But I mean, if you have a paradox problem, then it probably isn't going to happen. But the idea of going to parallel timelines, like as with the Man in the High Castle TV series with Amazon, you have lots of very, very similar timelines where only tiny things have happened. And if we're causing this quantum erasure problem, it might be doing the exact same thing that those quantum D computers are doing by accessing parallel timelines. When they are, maybe those timelines are merging or crossing over or blurring with ours at certain points. And one of those points might have been the 1990s. But once you've altered the timeline, it backtracks itself to the very beginning of time. Or it should. I cannot understand why in certain films and movies it hasn't done this. I've looked at shows from the 50s. I've been really researching this. They always show the globe just like it is now. But you get those rare instances where it doesn't. And I can't account for that. I have no idea why it would be so, unless the movie we've got now is from the timeline that had that, and it didn't change for some reason. But I mean, the examples of time travel are so numerous now that I just find it hard to believe that people don't believe that it's possible or even highly probable. You've got the problem with the black-eyed children. I'm sure you've heard about those.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And they are intimately involved, apparently, with this time-traveling phenomena.
I did not know that. I've only heard the stories of them, but I've never heard any theories as to where they came from. So take us away down that road, please.
Well, the main instance in that is a man ran into these kids, and I think it was two boys, and they're around the age of 12, and he called into Coast to Coast Radio, and he said, he was one of the very first to talk about it, and he said they were stealing his soul. And George Noy goes, well, how are they doing that? He said, well, they have been bouncing me back and forth through time constantly, and every time I go back and forth, I'm losing part of my memories. So for me, it's like they're stealing my soul. There won't be anything of me left soon. And he sounded quite sincere and in a panic. Now, of course, he could have been, having mental problems, emotional problems, or on drugs, but he was one of the very first, and he came up with this. And it's bothered the heck out of him. And of course, time travel and glitches in time travel could account for ghosts. The phenomenon of repeater ghosts, where they see the same scene acted out every night. A woman walks through the house and out through a wall or something, a lady in white, but doesn't interact with anyone. That could very well just be a glitch, like a stuck needle on a record, replaying the same thing over and over.
Like an echo.
Exactly. Or, yes, like an echo, or perhaps like a time loop. Again, if you watch the movies Loopers or any of these shows, it could be something like that. But the problem seems to be that when your history changes, and for you living now, it's always been that way. I don't remember an island off the coast of Australia. But if it existed in another timeline, and as big as it is, and as close to Australia it is, I imagine it would have a few million people there. And they had relatives around the world, people who traveled and lived in other countries. They're gone, the island's gone, and a lot of people remember the island but can't remember its name, and yet here it is on a couple of maps and a couple of movies. This globe in Dazed and Confused was an average school globe in a school setting. It was filmed on location at that school, and the globe isn't the center of attention. They're just spinning it idly in the background while they're talking. Two teenagers are talking. And here's this island flipping around on it. I mean, it's amazing. And if it was just the one thing, you could say, oh, well, maybe a problem with the film. But look at Friends. Look at that episode. I believe it was called Bracelet Buddies, also in the 90s. And it shows an island, and it's not the same island. It's a variation. It's a slightly smaller one in a slightly different position. And this is bizarre. But if we have countless timelines paralleling our own, you would have every possibility being played out. So there you go.
Fascinating.
I'm gonna have to look this up and
yeah, I'm
look
googling
at
that now too. I haven't seen that picture. It's absolutely bizarre. I have a theory as to what exactly was changed that caused all of this changes. Now, this is just a theory based on speculation and intuition, but I feel that what they did is went back and removed Hitler from the location that he was at and changed the outcome of that particular event, moved him over to Argentina, where in the original timeline, he had actually legitimately died. People have been speculating that he was moved to Argentina for decades now. Now there were FBI documents released showing that he was indeed moved to Argentina and he never really died in a ditch. But I think that the event that they changed was that, which caused all of this echoing effect. I don't know if you've come across any research to suggest that, but any thoughts on it?
Well, actually, just today I was researching it, and there's a lot of people who believe he ended up in Antarctica. In 1939 or 38, the Germans mounted a huge expedition to Antarctica, claimed a chunk of it as their own, Swaziland or something like that. They called it a German name. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it well. But they believe they built a base there, and a lot of people say that he went on a couple of subs. There were 2 submarines that did show up. We know this for a fact I think it was Argentina, and shortly disappeared after that. And they think those subs, and this was after the end of the World War II, but just shortly, that they went on down to Antarctica. And then, of course, right after World War II, just a few years later, America mounted a huge exploratory mission to Antarctica, supposedly under the guise it was classified to practice Arctic environment fighting, because we might have to fight the Soviet Union at the time. But the odd thing is they took a lot of naval ships with them and a lot of troops and over 100 airplanes, and they had an aircraft carrier. And they went to Antarctica. What were they doing there? And also, a couple of the ships didn't come back. Did they have a battle with the Nazis in Antarctica? Were they rooting out a nest of Nazis hiding in an underground base in Antarctica? I don't know, but it's certainly intriguing.
Right. Argentina would be the jump point over to Antarctica.
Oh, absolutely.
And then everybody's going down to Antarctica now. On the day of the elections, John Kerry was down in Antarctica instead of being here with the Clinton campaign.
Putin was on his way to Antarctica a few days ago.
Yeah, you had the head of the Orthodox Church. You had several politicians going down there. Recently, Buzz Armstrong? Or
Buzz Aldrin.
Buzz Aldrin. I don't know why I keep saying that.
Buzz Armstrong.
It's like the 10th time I've said that. Anyways, that's one of those little kids dolls. Remember that?
Uh-huh.
Armstrong.
Uh-huh. Stretch Armstrong.
Stretch Armstrong. That's it. So anyways, he was down there, and then supposedly he tweeted something that says, it's pure evil, and then deleted the tweet. I don't know if that tweet was real and really made by him, but he was airlifted out of there because of a heart attack or some heart issues or something like that. But there is all that focus down in Antarctica right now.
And there are rumors that not Obama, but Joe Biden went down there or is going down there. I can't remember, but the number of people have been going to Antarctica recently, and we know for a fact Buzz Aldrin was there. That's true enough. But what are they doing in Antarctica? Why all of a sudden is everyone making these trips to Antarctica? And of course, Admiral Byrd went down there too, and he made some pretty astounding claims too. This sort of thing just goes on and on. I'm almost at a loss these days because there's just so much information flowing in, and some of it's so strange. It's hard to try to. My approach to all of this is I'm trying to find. Everyone's researching something. I'm a MUFON field investigator. Someone else is investigating this, and someone else is investigating that. What we really need to do is do a synthesis now. We need to come together and start putting this stuff together and seeing how it interrelates. For instance, I'm sure you've heard of Project Pegasus, correct?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and you know about what's his name, Antonio Basaggio?
Andy
And
Bashago.
Bashago, yes.
Okay, actually, I looked up how to pronounce his name, and it's pronounced. I just did it before because I hate getting names wrong. It's pronounced like pay as you go, Baggio, Baggio.
No, he actually he told us it was like Chicago, Bashago, like Chicago.
Well, see, that's what I thought. But
Yeah.
when you hear it on the Google, explanation on how to pronounce something, it said, well, who knows? Maybe I didn't hear it correctly. But
it may just be the way he pronounces it in particular. But he's very particular about the pronunciation of his name and also his pictures too. He'll write me later and say, "Hey, Chris, the picture you put up there, can you please change it a little bit?"
So how does he pronounce his name? Baggio?
Bashago, like Chicago.
Bashago. Okay. I just like to get it straight if I can because I don't like to. There's nothing worse than saying something the wrong way and trying to sound like you know what you're talking about. But but he claims that he went to Mars with the teleportation event, and he says the teleportation thing also worked as time traveling. Now, he said he went to Mars. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I've come across other information since then that there was a sergeant, I believe he was, who claims he spent 17 years on Mars fighting aliens, and he goes into quite some length and evidence about it. And then there's another scientist who claims that there's evidence of a nuclear war on Mars, that there are isotopes that you'd only find in hydrogen bombs. And he's located 2 points in the northern hemisphere of Mars where he says they probably occurred, and he thinks that they were wiping people out. He says there were definite weapon signature isotopes showing the 2 massive nuclear airbursts in the northern regions of the planet. So everyone's now talking like they're going to Mars. And this... I'm not going to say his name again because I'll get it wrong for sure. But I guess I do have to say it, Bashago,
like Chicago.
Bashago. I have got to write that down in a phonetic way. Bashago says he was there. So again, you have one field where people are talking about time travel and teleportation, and then you have a completely different one where people are talking about Mars, and then all of a sudden there's this odd crossover and connection. And then you have this other scientist talking about the omega point. And you have other scientists saying that every point in space and time is all connected, and that this is how UFOs move about. And you start looking, and of course, if every point in space and time is connected, for instance, if you had a wormhole here on Earth, and the other end of the wormhole came out 13 billion light years away, you would be not only traveling through space, you'd be traveling through time, or of course, space. We don't call it space anymore, we call it space-time. So it seems to me that time travel is eminently possible and even probably quite probable.
Well, absolutely. And I was going to add also Laura Eisenhower. She is the granddaughter of Ike. And
well, you know what's funny is that I didn't even realize that Eisenhower was the one that signed the Greta Treaty until we started doing the research on one of the films that or just a short YouTube video that we put together. But obviously there was some extraterrestrial contact there between her great grandfather and the ETs, and here she is as a Project Pegasus whistleblower.
Yeah, saying that hey, they approached me and asked me to go to Mars and live there and be in a colony on Mars.
And again, they even claim that President Obama went to Mars before he was president. Well, long before he was president. Is this true? I don't know. But you start to get all these cross connections, and you do begin to wonder. And then, of course, there was Bob Lazar, and he worked at Area 51, or claimed he did. And they said he didn't. He said he was a physicist. He named the university. The university said they had no record of him being there. But then the investigator into it in Las Vegas, the television journalist, found an internal phone book from Area 51, and Bob Lazar, a physicist, is listed, and it gives the extension number for him. But then he said he would probably be the product or the victim of government making him a non-person. That seems to have happened. But then in 2015, another man who we know for a fact worked at Area 51 said that, oh no, he had attended. He came out and finally admitted he had attended meetings in which Bob Lazar was present and sessions on what they were talking about. And Bob Lazar says that according to what the briefings he'd gotten, the aliens have been interacting with Earth for 10,000 years. And that we have space capabilities. We have reverse engineered. There are two types of UFOs. There are the type that the aliens have, and they're the reverse engineered ones we have. And that these things work based on the fact that all points in space-time are connected, which means they not only travel through space, they travel through time. And Bob Lazar also mentioned that they had been given photographs by the aliens of dinosaurs, that they could take pictures of past times. He didn't say they could go back in time, but that they could somehow take pictures of past times on Earth.
Interesting. One of the temples we were looking at in Cambodia, Angkor Wat, has carvings of dinosaurs throughout the temple, which...
Yes, it does. Yeah. It's Stegosaurus, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And that's impossible according to modern science.
Well, it should be, shouldn't it? According to what we know about archaeology and our history, mainstream science. But mainstream science doesn't account for the Piri-Reis map, which shows Antarctica with mountain ranges and rivers and things that are all completely under ice now. And according to everything we know, there could not have been any time when there was no ice.
It is a strange world for sure. Rob, hold right there. We'll be right back. Hour number 3 coming up, ladies and gentlemen. This is absolutely fascinating stuff. I love it. We'll be right back.
To initiate phase 3 momentarily. Brace yourself, traveler. We are about to venture into the realms of the unknown. www.beyondtheveilradio.com.
One night, a man had a dream he was walking along the beach, listening to Jaren and Missa on Monday Night Raw.
Across the flat horizon flashed scenes from his past, and he realized life wasn't what he was taught.
For each scene, he noticed 2 sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to him and the other to Jaranism.
When the last scene of his life flashed before him, he looked back in the sand and noticed many times along his path there was only one set of footprints. He realized they happened at the lowest times of his life, and so he questioned Jaranism about it.
Guys, you said if I listened to your show, you'd be with me all the way. But in my times of need, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why when I needed you both the most, you would leave me.
My dear child, we love you and would never leave you.
When you see one set of prints, that's because it wasn't on a Monday.
Need a friendly voice? Call Grandma.
But if you need truth at all costs, then join us for a threesome.
Ooh.
Mondays 7 to 10 p.m. Pacific, only on truthfrequencyradio.com.
You are listening to Beyond the Veil with Chris and Sherry Geo on iHeartRadio.
T-minus 60 seconds and counting.
Welcome, fellow traveler, to phase 3 of this journey. Here you will experience an even deeper level of understanding as we traverse through the boundaries of hyperspace consciousness. Here, you will find that reality is altered with a single thought and a single intention. Set your intention now and prepare to travel deeper. Beyond the veil.
Today is, of course, Friday the 13th, hour number 3. We have Rob Shelsky on with us. And it is the day when we observe the gruesome slaughter of several teenagers at the infamous Camp Crystal Lake massacre that happened. I don't know where I'm going with that. It was supposed to be a joke, but it's
That's
terrible.
awful, baby.
Friday the 13th apocalypse predicted, though. The first apocalyptic alarm of 2017 is being raised by conspiracy theorists who see potential danger in a trio of events to unfold over the next couple of days. Concerned end times enthusiasts cite that a combination of this year's first full moon this evening, the Friday the 13th of 2017, and Venus being the brightest that it's been in 8 years is a possible harbinger of doom. Connecting this brew of celestial events with biblical prophecy, they noted that Luke 12:25 warns of a somewhat similar scenario as a harbinger of the apocalypse. What do you guys think out there? Do you think the world's going to end tonight or tomorrow night? Let us know.
Well, I think the patriarchy stole Friday the 13th from women and then made it evil. Before Friday the 13th became associated with bad luck and the horror movie franchise that refuses to die, it used to be considered a powerful day for celebrating feminine energy. Both Friday and the number 13 have been twisted to carry negative connotations. One myth typically associated with the number 13 indicates someone dies within a year after eating at a table with 12 other people. This stems from the Last Supper, the painting of Jesus eating with the 12 apostles. Well, the painting got its name because Jesus Christ died shortly after. Now, regarding Friday, that is the day of the week that Eve allegedly offered the forbidden fruit to Adam. Friday was also the day that Adam was kicked out of paradise, the day he repented, the day he died, and the day he was cremated. And it was on a Friday, Good Friday, that Jesus was killed.
How did they determine that was on a Friday?
I think it was from the fact that they would always have they would do their ceremonies on certain days of the week, and then they
no the Adam and Eve thing.
Now that I think
I think that's just stretching it a little bit.
Yeah, that's totally stretching it. But before Christianity came along, Friday the 13th was, quote, a very powerful day for feminine energy and creativity. Before patriarchal times, Friday the 13th was considered the day of the goddess. It was considered a day to worship the divine feminine that lives in us all and to honor the cycles of creation and death and rebirth. 13 is a female number representing the average number of a woman's cycles in a year. It is also the number 2 of annual cycles of the moon, viewed by earth-based religions as female. A woman was considered to embody divine and magical powers. She was regarded by all for her wisdom and ability to offer intuitive and psychic messages. It was only when society became more patriarchal that women were made to feel shamed when they had their periods and to ignore their amazing potential to create and hold space for new life.
Fantastic. We'll be right back with more Rob Shelsky right here on Beyond the Veil.
My dear traveler, remember this. Whatever plane our consciousness may be acting in, both we and the things belonging to that plane are, for the time being, our only realities. However, if we mistake the shadows for realities, we find ourselves confusing the upward progress of the ego as an elevation of consciousness. Thus, beware of oneself when you step beyond the veil.
And we are back speaking with Rob Shelsky. And before we get back to Rob, I wanted to point out that I didn't know that in June of 1992, what was his name? John Mack. And he was a Harvard psychiatrist and a physicist, David E. Pritchard, organized a 5-day conference at MIT to discuss and debate the ET abduction phenomenon. And the reason why I was looking at that was because I was trying to think of what changed. What changed in the early 90s or mid 90s to kind of signal that time travel and time manipulation was actually indeed occurring. And I had never heard of this conference that they have. They said it attracted a wide range of professionals, and that in response, they were actually awarded an IG Nobel Prize in 1993. And I had never heard of any of this. So maybe in this new timeline that we've been in, or this collection of timelines, it has been a much more open, diverse debate and back and forth that was allowed about things like ET abduction, quantum mechanics, the things that we talk about on our show, the things that are more beyond the veil were okay to talk about in the 90s and in the early 2000s, as opposed to how I remember it, which was, oh my gosh, don't you dare talk about getting abducted by aliens. Oh, don't you dare. You will be completely discredited and you will have no life whatsoever unless you want to be on the fringe. That whole fringe element seems to have become postscript mainstream. What do you think about that, Rob?
Well, actually, I think, we've gone through major changes on our attitude about this sort of thing. Is it from our timeline or the blurring of another timeline with ours? I don't know. I do have to mention one thing, though. You're talking about Friday the 13th, triskaidekaphobia. I'd always heard that it was because the Knight Templars were all arrested on Friday, October the 13th of 1307 in mass, and butchered and tortured and killed, and that was the end of the Knights Templar. And to this day, Friday the 13th was considered unlucky. They were all rounded up at dawn. It was apparently the King of France was in collusion with the Pope. The Knight Templars were considered to be too powerful. They were the bankers of Europe at the time, and so they just decided to get rid of them, and they accused him of witchcraft, sorcery, all sorts of things. And they died quite horribly in the hundreds and thousands. And that's where I heard that Friday the 13th comes from. So I guess there's a lot of different stories.
I forgot about that. And that would also go along with the patriarchy as well, because who is the Catholic Church other than the patriarchy? I mean, that's the Saturnian definition of patriarchy, is this Roman Catholic society. It's a cult.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
I didn't think about that.
But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting too. But with regard to time travel, and especially with quantum mechanics, I am beginning to come to the conclusion, and so are quite a few scientists actually, that we may not live in reality as we know it at all. But one thing, we always thought quantum problems were always on the submicroscopic level. Not long ago, they created a quantum drum, which was 0.5 millimeter in size, and they showed that it was in two states at once, two superimposed states, like Schrodinger's cat. Now, this is something the human eye can see quite easily. It's small. It would fit between your thumb and forefinger, and it's tiny, but you can definitely see it with the naked eye. And this thing showed quantum effects. If this is so, it means that quantum effects occur on the macro level, our level of everyday life. And quantum effects say that a particle is only where it is because that's probably where it should be. But it can also probably, to a lesser extent, be somewhere else. That means that human beings, for instance, are far more likely to be right where we are right now, but there's a small possibility that they could also be somewhere else, like on Mars or in space at any given moment. And of course, we have all these cases of humans disappearing, just popping in and out, and vehicles moving around. My book, Time Travel Invasion, talks about that quite a bit. And so if quantum effects are happening on the macro level, if quantum reality is what we are really living in on the macro level, if where we are, if we're all just what basically amounts to probability waves. For instance, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Men Who Stare at Goats. I think that was the title.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, remember they kept running at the wall, and finally at the end of the movie he managed to run through the wall?
Mm-hmm.
According to quantum physics, that's possible. It's highly improbable, but it is definitely a possibility. You might have to do it for 1 trillion years or more and keep doing it over and over, and who's going to live that long? But if you did, there is a decent probability that you would actually have that happen. So if we are living, and also there's a medical scientist who has found that there are microtubules in the human brain in neurons, and these seem to connect directly with quantum vibrations. And he theorizes that human consciousness is a result of quantum vibrations, that our minds are a quantum manifestation. So what we think of as reality may not really be reality at all. And if that's the case, then all bets are off on just about anything and everything you can imagine.
Well, I want to add something to that as well. The Acacia confusa plant, which is used as an alternative source of dimethyltryptamine in ayahuasca brews, it has something called DMT, of course, which is dimethyltryptamine, and that's the active hallucinogen element in there. Then you've got something called NMT. It's neuromethyltryptamine, I think. And this neuromethyltryptamine, they don't know why it's in there, but in the acacia plant, it's about 50% of that, and then another 50% would be the dimethyltryptamine. There are so many differences, though, between an experience that you have with just the dimethyltryptamine and an experience that you have with this NMT, that people have actually speculated that there's something quantum going on here. They mentioned that it has to do with the microtubules in your brain, and that it interacts with these microtubules in some way that it's propelling you into a quantum state.
Or an alternate quantum state.
Alternate quantum state.
Yes, absolutely. If something is affecting the brain, it could be affecting the neurons. It's affecting the neurons. It's affecting how the microtubules operate. And you may not actually just be experiencing a high or a hallucination. You might actually, within your mind, within your brain, be experiencing an alternate reality. I could see how that could be quite possible. That's what I mean about the synthesis of the different disciplines. We're just now finally beginning to put these things together, and there's all these crossovers, and they all tend to reinforce each other. And if this is so, then yes, the universe could be in the tip of your fingernail, and the tip of your fingernail could be in the universe. It could work both ways. It's highly likely that space-time as we know it and reality as we know it is not as we know it. I mean, let's face it, 75 to 90% of the universe, we don't even know what it is. It's composed of dark matter and dark energy. Hey, that's great. What is dark matter and dark energy? We have no idea. But what it does mean is around 90% of our universe is unknown to us. So we're sitting here trying to find definitive answers. We know it all based on 5 to 7% of our knowledge of the universe, because the rest is unknown to us. Is maybe the real universe is on the other side with that dark matter and dark energy, and we're just like cream floating on the top of a cup of coffee, and there's all this deep below it that we have no idea that it exists.
Well, one of the things that kind of made me start thinking that it was an artificial simulated reality that we live in is the fact that our technology is so good now that with AI and artificial reality that we put ourselves in already is pretty good. And then you add to that the fact that this new phenomena that we're seeing, the flat Earth theory, has gained so much steam throughout the last couple of years. There's no way that it could gain that much steam without there being something behind it. And so I started looking into this more and more, and I found that when you go up with balloons to the ionosphere and beyond, and you get out towards the edge of space, you don't see anything. And it made me start wondering, okay, well, if you created an artificial reality, how much would you really need to do? I mean, really. I mean, if most people aren't going to get outside the atmosphere anyway, why make space? Let's just leave that out, leave that blank, and then we fill in the blanks with what people are going to be looking at and interacting with on a day-to-day basis.
Well, like a video game.
Yeah.
I've hacked video games before to get to areas that you can't typically get to. And when you move the avatar or camera outside of the bounds of the actual video game, you realize that when the character's looking out the window, there's just a small formation out there of what the character sees out the window, but it's nothing but green space or black space aside from that. And it's only the perspective of looking out the window that creates the illusion that there's actually an atmosphere or an environment out there, but rather it's just all blank space. And you wonder if this is a artificial construct, if that's what also appears out there as well.
Well, of course, a lot of particle physicists, the quantum physicists, say that it could very well be that reality is simply a result of consciousness. Well, you know for a fact that when we observe something, it behaves differently on the quantum scale than it does when it's not being observed. A particle is only a particle when we observe it. When we don't observe it, it's a wave. And actually now they're saying it's probably a probability wave. It's just probably going to be a particle, but not necessarily. It's the act of consciousness observing it that makes it so. Now, the big question is, are trees enough to cause reality to be the way it is, or can cats and dogs do it? We're not sure. We just know that consciousness seems to be an integral part of our universe. And there are some that say that our universe is rather like your video game, is that when we look at something, it's there, but when we don't look at something, it isn't there. You turn around, so I've done this. You dart around and look behind you to see if you can catch the universe not being there. Of course, it's there. But they're saying that basically it's not until you observe it. And if that's so, again, that's rather creepy too. It really calls into question some fundamental things. I mean, are we children of this universe, or is the universe a creation of our minds? And it's a very strange concept. And of course, people say, well, what difference does it make? Well, it makes a lot of difference. I mean, are your loved ones really there, or are they just manifestations of your own mind? Do they exist and you don't, and they've just created you? Or do you exist and they don't, you just created them? You can get into some really philosophical discussions on this.
Right. I call it the Truman Show effect. Like, what if I'm the only one that's real? And everything around me is something my mind is making up so that I can survive. Okay, then you and I
have to have a discussion, because I'm not real happy with this world you created, okay?
What if this is subjective for everybody? And then let's take it a step further. We have a lot of sleeping people out there, and we think that they're asleep, but you have all of this information on the internet, and people just completely disregard it. I mean, it's all the information to wake yourself up to a higher state of consciousness is there for you. Now, it's willful ignorance at this point. But people still walk around in the same programmed manner of completely soulless in some cases, emotionless, soulless, unable to feel each other. They treat each other like crap. I wonder if some of them are just organic containers just walking around with no actual consciousness. Well, I mean, they have a consciousness, but it's an artificial type of consciousness. And what we have inside of this artificial simulation is real players, like in World of Warcraft. You have several real players, and then you have parts of the machine itself that are artificial intelligence.
Okay, so basically you're saying it's like a video game where there are NPCs involved?
I think
non-playing characters. It's characters in that walk and talk, and you can interact with them, but they're not playing. They're not other people playing in the game. They're just computer-generated characters to fill in the landscape, so to speak.
I think that's a possibility.
That's a little creepy too, because in which case I could be your NPC or you could be mine. I'm really hoping you're mine and I'm not yours.
You never know, but that thought has crossed my mind. Like, what if I'm a computer program in and of myself? But we see programs playing out in the geopolitical sphere, for instance. We see the same programs playing out over and over and over again, and now it's gotten to the point to where the veil is so thin that people see right through it. And we've speculated, what if the entire governmental structure, or at least the main characters operating it, are indeed artificial intelligence, and they have to work on a finite program? Because a player can think in many different dynamics, but a computer avatar, not an avatar, but rather a computer generated character can only do what it's been programmed to do, and that's it.
And of course, if we're all programs, then we're apps within the bigger program. You and I would be an app created by the simulation. And like, for instance, with a cat, cats have unique and distinct personalities, and they behave quite differently, but they all behave overall pretty much the same. And they are restricted by the limitations of their program, their creation as being a cat. They can only have a certain IQ. They have an urge to clean themselves. They have an urge to do whatever cats do. And within limitations, they can be variable in this, but overall, a cat is a cat. So are we the same way? Or are we the creators of the game ourselves, or are our descendants? And that's a big question too. But with this time travel thing, if all this is true, if space-time is malleable, if people are shooting off to Mars and teleporting back, if we do have a hidden space fleet, if aliens have been on or around Earth for the last 10,000 years, if we have evidence of time travel, and I quote quite a bit of in my book Time Travel Invasion, again, I try to bring evidence from different sources. I try for hard evidence from archaeology. I try it from anecdotal stories by different people and reports by newspapers, this sort of thing. And the end result is there seems to be a heck of, I mean, even George Washington supposedly had some sort of time travel experience, or people telling him the future. I mean, supposedly at Valley Forge, when he was about to give up, he was shown a map by some lightly green colored skinned people that he thought were Native Americans. And he said they showed him a map of the United States, and it was raining, and every time a raindrop fell and struck the map, a city would appear on the United States that didn't exist yet. And this was written up in the 1800s as a newspaper article, and it's an ongoing story about George Washington. So was he being directed to do what he did? And when he was likely to fail, they intervened so that he wouldn't fail? Did America have to be here for a reason? Is someone making sure we are?
Interesting. If I'm a computer program, I'm the antivirus for sure. That's what I'm here for. But
you're malware.
Yeah, we're the malware.
No, we're the antivirus.
We're the antivirus.
Yeah, we're here to take care of the malware and expose the malware for what it's doing. The malware is, in my opinion, the evil that runs through whatever this evil is, but it runs through this construct, the controlling mechanism of this construct. Because there is light and darkness, day and night. I mean, it's a world of duality with a little bit of strife and struggle. We achieve to elevate our consciousness. I mean, we aspire to elevate our consciousness and move on to the next level. So I understand there has to be the good with the bad, but there is a darkness that is completely unnatural within this construct that has to be, first of all, exposed by shining the light on it, and then eliminated by the collective consciousness expelling this kind of darkness. That's a whole.
Are you sure it's unnatural, or is it a manifestation of our own behavior, and so it's perfectly natural?
I think it is unnatural. This level of darkness that we're speaking of. There is some darkness, like I said, but there's something that's, well, let me put it like this: it may not necessarily be unnatural, but rather it's off balance.
Well, if not off balance, if there's an infinite number of parallel realities. And it looks like there probably is, if the founding member of the Quantum D company says that their computers are using parallel universe computers to help run their quantum computers. And he didn't say this was likely. He said it was so. It's a seminar. It's on YouTube. You can watch it.
Did you see that photo of the CERN guy with a sign that said Mandela on it?
Yes. And of course, that's the other thing. Other people saying, well, the CERN experiments are causing this problem with the Mandela effect. It's causing problems with their timeline. And it could well be. I mean, we're doing things we've never done before on the quantum level. And I'm beginning to wonder, when we first did nuclear bombs, we thought of them as just really big bombs, really handy to have. It was only later we realized just how dangerous the radiation and the fallout and all the other side effects nuclear winters were from them. And now we're doing quantum computing, and we're dealing on the quantum level to a great deal like we have never done before. And are we getting side effects? But they're just so bizarre that we don't recognize them as side effects. It's like, oh, we have this weird Mandela effect. It's just something on the internet that a bunch of nuts are talking about. Or is it a real phenomenon, which I think it is? And is it a side effect of what we're now delving into in the quantum realm? By the way, there are some that profess that dreams are where the microtubules are allowing you to enter alternate realities. So, I mean, we still don't really know what the heck a dream is, but we know everything seems to dream that's got a brain to any degree, at least mammals dream. Dogs, cats dream, we know that. So what exactly are dreams? What are their purpose, and how do they function? And some are saying, well, they're actually alternate realities that either one, we ourselves are creating for a very short space of time, just at random, almost as if we were gods and throwing out realities or universes at random. And some of them quite bizarre, but then universes can have any basic codes to them. We have a certain set of laws and fundamental mathematics in ours, but they don't have to be the same in other parallel universes. They can be different.
Interesting. I have talked about dreams before in the context of several different types. You've got the dreams that are very apparently just random events that happen during the week all jumbled up together. And then you have those dreams that you feel like it's another timeline that is happening somewhere else.
And then don't you also have a dream where it seems incredibly real, and you wake up and you say, yeah, I know it was a dream, but it seems so real.
Oh, yeah. And I find myself being upset by my nightmares because Chris did something mean to me in my dream, but it felt so unbelievably real that I wake up and I almost cry because I'm still feeling those emotions. And I do wonder if it's another timeline that he made a decision to treat me a certain way when,
I would never do that.
When he's not like that, And
well, again, it could be that timeline could be your own creation, which you had him do that. So he's not really at fault. He was just a creation of you in that timeline. And, I actually have some,
I like that. You should write a book on couples advice.
I woke up once and I had someone punch me in the shoulder. I go, what was that for? They go, you treated me like crap in my dream. I go, what? I'm not responsible for your dreams. Well, I wouldn't have dreamt it if there wasn't something to it. It's like, I need to get out of here now.
I had an ex-girlfriend like that.
Yeah, I think so.
I know exactly, what you're referring to.
So you cheated on me in my nightmare last night.
Uh-huh.
What were you going to do tonight? Yeah.
We'll be right back. Much more with Rob Shelsky right here on Beyond the Veil. Put your sheets over you and prepare for some spooky tales from the other side. But back to the topic at hand, time travel and the artificial reality, the energies here. I mean, we've touched upon so many different things right now. And I guess it all comes down to subjective experiences. That's one of the unique things about the Mandela Effect, in my opinion, is that if the timelines have indeed merged with one another, then we have people that are from the old timeline and people who are from the new timeline. And that's why some people remember one thing and other people, they swear they remember another, and it's just changed. So when things start to just kind of mix and mishmash together, it becomes an utter mess. But if this is an artificial reality, and the reason that I talk about artificial reality so much is because when you realize that it is, and it's very probable that it is at the very least, then you can change it to whatever timeline you want, to whatever reality you want. And you realize that things like astrology, for instance, Cherie's a very, very talented astrologer. I've said this a million times over. I listen to every astrological chart she does for me, every transit chart and every tarot reading. And I do exactly what the tarot says. Or I do exactly what the transits are going to say. And at times, I'll act a certain way or have a certain experience or something like that, and she'll come to me and say, hey, I wrote down your transits last night, and this is all in your transit chart here for today. You're going to experience all this. I should have told you about it before. But I really take it very seriously, and it all makes sense. If it's an artificial reality, well, then the stars are going to affect us a certain way. We're able to tap into the computer code, and then our very thought and our very intention in of itself changes reality. So how many times have you been driving down the road and you see a cop behind you and you go, oh, I'm going to get pulled over. I know I'm going to get pulled over. I know I'm going to get pulled over. Boom, you get pulled over.
Whoop.
Right. Yeah. Or you do the opposite, like, oh, no, he's not even looking at me. And he goes right by you, and that's it. I really think that we can change this reality. Rob, any thoughts for the listeners about changing this reality to a positive reality for themselves?
Well, we know for a fact that the human consciousness is able to see up to 10 seconds into the future. We know this because they've done study after study at university after university. The human mind does not seem to exist entirely in the present, but partly in the future, and also partly in the past, because everything you see that comes into your eyes, by the time it gets to your brain, is a good piece of a second late. And this, people think, well, what's the big deal? Well, if you're driving at 200 miles an hour or trying to catch a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, your brain is perceiving something that by the time it comes to you, it's already past you. But somehow our brains compensate for this and manage to catch the ball, even though the lag time of what we're seeing would mean that that ball would have crossed the plate before we should have actually reacted in time to catch it or hit it. The same is true with consciousness into the future. Study after study shows that people react to negative images in random picture showings before it actually occurs. Now, for some people, it's as little as 2 seconds to 5 seconds, but on average, 10 seconds. This is extremely strange. But it does mean a lot. It means if you're driving down a highway and you're coming to an intersection and there's going to be an accident and you sense this coming, you have time to avoid the accident. So can we change your future? Yes, we can. However, if you're saying this is a simulation, and I think there's a darn good chance this is a simulation, we're not the programmers. Somebody else is. And if there's alterations to it, they're making the alterations unless they've allowed us the ability to alter it ourselves.
I think you hit on something key there, because we have all of these religious structures around us. And I don't know what your take is on religion, and excuse me if I offend you in any way, if you're of the religious mindset. But in my opinion, religion is meant to control you and take that power away from you. There's a creator somewhere else. There's something else that you have to give your power to, when all in all, we are the creators ourselves and we are the programmers.
We are the captains of our own fate, you say?
Yes.
I think to a large degree that's true. You know, I used to really be into the I Ching. I used to like it. I developed quite an ability at it, to the point where I had people seeking me out saying, can you do my I Ching? It's like, no, I really don't want to, I mean, but the I Ching basically says the future is unfolding as it should. And you are a part of that future, but you have choices you can make. But once you've made those choices, they're a part of the history of the universe, and therefore they are a part of the divine plan, if you believe in divine plans. So, in other words, yes, there is a plan, the universe is preset, but even so, we have the ability to be the captains of our own fate within that plan, which I thought was a marvelous dichotomy. I mean, yes, the future is fixed, but it's only fixed because we're going to make certain choices. We don't know what they are because we haven't made them yet, but we will be making them.
Interesting. We are slaves to the stars until we realize that we're slaves to the stars. Because I find myself very under the, I don't want to say control because that's not the right word. Influence. That's a better word. Influence of the stars. But once Cherie tells me about the transits, then I'm aware of them and I'm able to, for instance, I'll just give you an arbitrary example here, but something that actually happened. I had a meeting, and Cherie said, look, in this meeting, according to your transit charts, it's going to be very heated, things aren't going to go well, et cetera, et cetera. So I was able to go into that meeting with that in mind, and I completely changed the outcome of that meeting, and I changed everything towards the positive just by knowing. But there have been times that I've gone into a meeting, for instance, and then I'll come out and Cherie will tell me about my transits after the fact, and it happened exactly the way the transits said they were going to happen.
So I try to do them for him the day before now.
Yes.
Well, see, I did that with I Ching. I would ask the person, because, you have to ask an if statement with the I Ching, and I'd say, I want you to think of like if I do this or if I do that. And then I'm going, but don't tell me what it is. And then I would do the reading for him. And then after the reading, I would say, okay, now what was your question? In one case, I told a woman, and it came up with her that one of the lines, her changing lines, was that she needed to cross the great river in order to achieve success. And I said, what was your question? She said, well, I'm supposed to go on a trip to St. Louis, and I was wondering if I should go or not. I said, you're crossing the Mississippi, right, to get there? And she goes, yes. I said, oh, the Great River.
Wow. I kind of do the same thing with the tarot. I don't like people to give me any information. I want them to be in their space and thinking about this situation that they're having, and then I give them just a general read, and 90% of the time it it just so happens that the question that they asked was exactly what the tarot brings up. And I think it has to do with what you were talking about earlier, the fact that our brains know what's going to happen at least 10 seconds before it even does. And so as a result, the cards are also kind of going off of that quantum leap in the brain.
Or you're manifesting it yourself, and the cards are simply a manifestation of your will. They're simply an extension of your consciousness. Scientists theorize that the reason we have this ability, the human body, absolutely, we know for a fact, reacts to negative images before they appear, up to 10 seconds before. So study after study, university after university has shown this. So we know the body is physically reacting in a negative way to a negative image, and there's no way anyone could know, not even the control groups, not the people executing the experiments, knows when these images that are completely random will appear. You'll have all these lovely scenic pictures of baby deer and that sort of thing. All of a sudden you'll have this horrible picture, and they're reacting to it before they see it. So we know the human mind works this way. So if we do have these microtubules, and we do, if we are a manifestation of a quantum reality, maybe our consciousness doesn't really reside in this reality, but in the quantum reality. And what we're seeing here are manifestations. And this could account for your beliefs that we can change our futures and our reality. In fact, Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot said that often physicists theorize there should be a new particle in their standard model theory to make it work, and that this new particle will be there. And then CERN, and before that other places, Fermi labs, were running these experiments, and at first they wouldn't get it. Then someone somewhere in England or Russia would get a discovery of the particle. Then all of a sudden, running the exact same experiments over again for the umpteenth time, they'd suddenly find evidence for it in America and England as well. So it may be that we're actually creating our reality as we go.
Wow. I've also wondered what if we're, and this is way out there, so forgive me.
We get into some deep conversations.
Yes, we do, especially if we've been drinking ayahuasca. We'll
yes.
go so deep.
We unlock all the mysteries of the universe at that point, and then we get on the show and people think we're crazy. So we stop doing that.
I've got to get some. It definitely sounds like something to have.
But I've often wondered if we are moving around in these meat suits, but our actual bodies are in a pod somewhere outside of this universe, outside of this reality completely. And that when we die, we're going to wake up and look at each other and go, that ride kind of sucked. Can we try something else now?
Same thing. I was thinking maybe we're living in another reality, and these are our vacations. We get to spend a life in a simulated reality. We can choose whatever life, whatever time period we want. So time really has no. You could choose now, and then the next time on vacation, you can go back 300 years and choose another life. And maybe we're just vacationing, and then we wake up and we're back in reality. It's like Total Recall, the movies, and we go back to work. We have these memories of a fun time was had in Napoleon's. Russia, but bad winters, of course. But other than that, it was all right. But it is possible. But you do realize that you don't really have a body per se. You do understand that, right? You do understand that you are 99.9999999% vacuum, because the space between the particles that make up your atoms constitute that much. Our atoms are 99.999% vacuum. It's an incredible number. So I used to wonder, well, if we're just that much vacuum, we're almost totally vacuum. How is it my hand won't go through my desk? A vacuum, like a ghost hand should go through a ghost desk. Well, it doesn't, but that's because of one of the fundamental forces, which is the strong atomic interaction, which is the repelling force, which doesn't allow my electrons to go through the electrons of the desktop. So
can I ask you something? Have you had those nights where you're sitting there and trying to do that?
Oh yes,
I have too.
Have you had those nights where you try to make a magazine float off the coffee table and come to you so you don't have to get up?
Yes. If it's possible, I will achieve it at some point. That's my goal.
I haven't had much luck so far. That darn magazine just refuses to move. But but yes, of course I've done that. I think we all have. I think the movie Men Who Stare at Ghosts, or however it's titled, is a good example of that. I mean, but the fact that we all do this, the fact that we all think this, the fact that we all wonder this, makes me wonder if it isn't so on some level.
I agree with you, because there's a lot of gnosis, let's just put it like that, or knowledge, or whatever you want to call it. That
you mean gnosis as in Gnosis?
Yes. There's like a knowing that we all have, but then reality and the construct tells us, I guess our conscious mind jumps in and says, no, that's not possible. But the subconscious, or maybe even the spirit, is feeding us this information that our conscious mind talks us out of.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we and everything around us is almost pure vacuum, and by the way, even the few subatomic particles that actually are solid, that tiny electron, they're not either. If you believe in string theory, they're just vibrations. So not only are we 99.999% vacuum, but what little there is of us that's supposed to be solid is actually just vibrations. And string theory says it's just the way the string vibrates, what particle it manifests. So what is reality? Apparently reality is our consciousness. And that's it. And the rest of it is just a manifestation, if not of our consciousness, of something. But whatever it is, it's not real. Our consciousness exists in a universe that is almost entirely vacuum.
Wow.
I know, it's strange. I mean, we walk around, we walk and talk, we have cars, we have desks, we have our bodies, we have our hands. I look at them, I touch them, I feel them. And yet I'm actually just touching vacuum.
See, this raises...
If you went on someone who was a date and their mind, their mental capabilities were 99% not there, you wouldn't feel like you had much in common with them, would you?
That is true.
Well, and it also brings some meaning to the idea of atomic energy, nuclear weapons. You know, what is that other than taking that atom and then breaking it apart and then breaking the inside of it up and then releasing all this massive amount of energy from doing that? I mean, that makes sense too. It's whatever
equals MC squared. Yeah, and if you manage to find antimatter, and we have created it in the lab in tiny amounts, and you mix it with real matter, it's 100% energy. Atomic bombs are incredibly inefficient compared to an antimatter bomb.
Right.
But yes, it's all energy. So basically, matter is solidified energy. And by the way, matter is a lot of energy. Even a small amount of matter creates an incredible amount of energy. So you can actually, one description of matter is that it is solidified energy. So if our consciousnesses are existing in solidified energy, then we're basically, well, I mean, it's all just very strange. The further you get into it, the weirder and weirder it gets, to the point where you begin to wonder, again, terra firma, where do I stand? Where do I find solid ground? How do I know that anything I'm researching or looking at has validity or is real? Or am I just giving it that validity and realness?
I was just about to say that. It's almost as if you're reading my mind, because the conundrum here that we're facing is we have a geopolitical problem. We've got corruption all over the place. I don't know how you feel about this whole Pizzagate stuff that recently came out, but there's some terrible things that are going on. The internet doesn't quite have it right. I think there's a lot of rabbit trails as far as that goes, but there are some very horrible things going on. But then when you think about it in the context of an artificial reality, then you think to yourself, well, how real is this? Or is this just all part of the computer program to get you even more sucked in and integrated into the idea that this reality is real?
Or is it real because we're making it so? You know, in the 60s, we had an awful lot of problems at the time when we had the Cold War was at its height, you know, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I used to have dreams of nuclear war as a small child. You just knew it was going to happen. I mean, you'd go to sleep, I'd wake up from a nightmare where I saw bombs going off in the distance through the window. Dreams, nightmares. But this was, so we've had some bad times before, and yet we came out with shows like Star Trek that were very positive in nature and showed a positive future. Then something happened around the late 70s and 80s. Our futures prognostications in movies began to get dark. I call it the Blade Runner syndrome. Everything became dark and drippy. Whether you're on board the ship in the movie The Alien, where it dripped and there were chains hanging in a dark room, or whether you're in Blade Runner and everything was dark, or whether you're in any of numbers of movies, they're all dystopians, they're dark, they're drippy, and they're horrible. But when we were positive, our future was positive. And then when we started developing a negative scenario in all our movies and our books and stuff, our future is, maybe it's just me, I don't know, but it seems to be becoming increasingly negative. Are we creating this ourselves, I wonder?
Oh yeah, you see it even now with movies like the Divergent series that I was just going over a few days ago, and seeing all the esoteric symbolism in it. I see in all these movies nuclear holocaust, a dystopian society, and yet it's still got a very good story in the end of humanity overcoming that. And so it's almost like whoever's guiding the direction of our collective consciousness wants there to be a huge war and reset event so that they can start over and start anew with a whole new society that, is in their hands and is under their complete control. But they...
Do you know how biblical that sounds? Isn't that exactly what God was supposed to have done in the Old Testament with the Great Flood?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and it's what's supposed to happen in the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel. That's what's supposed to happen, as, there's a new heaven and a new earth, and the old earth had passed away and there was no more sea. I mean, that's literally what it says.
If you believe in the Anunnaki, if you believe that they did rule the earth, and if you did believe that they taught us that knowledge was the forbidden fruit, there were two trees in the Garden of Eden, right? The two trees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There was the tree of knowledge and the tree of life.
Right.
But we were forbidden to touch the tree of knowledge. And of course, according to Sitchin, when he talks about the Anunnaki ruling the earth back in pre-Babylonian times, he says they did not want us to have any knowledge. They wanted us to be the subservient slave class they had created. And so all through our history, you have the Prometheus stories, where one of the gods gave us fire or knowledge and was punished eternally in a horrible way for it. This is a recurring theme in our history. So maybe this whole feeling that if we do this, if we acquire this knowledge, the apocalypse, the end will come, is a strong racial memory that was grafted into us so that we wouldn't rebel against those in power.
That's a whole nother show, Rob, and
yes,
we are running out of time, but we're going to have to do that show because I'm in complete agreement with you. I think it was Enki. Enki took us to the side and was like, look, there's something different. They have some kind of consciousness, a divine spark within them. And Enlil came in. Why aren't they in the garden? I mean, why aren't they in the mines? Why are they running around in the garden?
Why aren't they working?
Yeah. And Enki taught us the priesthoods and taught us astrology and, the mysteries of the universe. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there was definitely.
So you do wonder if that is, and of course it's been handed down in various versions, as with Prometheus, same thing really, the gift of fire and being punished for it, the knowledge of fire. It is a little weird, isn't it?
It is. And back to modern day religion, they teach you the opposite. Knowledge is evil, slavery is freedom, subservience is...
obey,
yes.
obey. Do not question, take it on faith. I looked up the definition of faith. Faith is a belief in that which cannot be proven empirically. And unfortunately, with my problem with the various religions is they all claim that you have to take them on faith. And so it leaves me wondering which one is the real one, because I'm just not sure if any of them are the real one. Or if there is even a real one.
The real one is the one that's inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think.
Yes.
The one that resonates.
Rob, this has been incredibly awesome. Tell people about your websites, latest books, where they can pick those up, etc.
Okay. Well, the blog site, I use a blog site, but it's 5 pages. It's a full website. It's robshelsky.blogspot.com. You can get my books either in print or in ebook formats, various formats at Amazon. If you want other ebook formats besides Kindle, go to Smashwords. Also various publishers. I am with Permuted Press. I'm with one of the big 6. And so I'm pretty much all over there. If you just type in my name, stuff will come up.
Excellent. And anything you'd like to leave the audience with in the last minute and a half?
Yeah, I think they should go on listening to your show more, because I've never seen a show. And honestly, I'm not going to say I believe with everything that you guys say, but you certainly make people think, question, and wonder. And I think that's the best thing anyone can make anyone do, if you can make people do anything.
That's what it's all about. And I don't even believe everything I say.
No.
I'm just at a point right now where this is my understanding, but I am open to change. And when new information comes in, I change my opinions accordingly.
Absolutely.
That's what we should do as researchers. One of the things when we first started the show is our viewpoint started changing based on research, and we were chastised for it. And I thought to myself, how can you chastise somebody for changing their opinion based on new information? But that's what we have to do.
To live is to grow, and to grow is to learn. If you do not learn, you do not grow. And so what's the point of even being on Earth if you don't change?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Very well said. Rob, thank you so much for your time this evening. This has been, like I said, absolutely amazing. Don't forget, keep your thumb to the sky. Don't forget to bring your towel and kiss the one you love right now, because you never know the last time it's going to be. We love you.
Love you guys. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for traveling with us this evening. Meditate on your experience. And remember, reality is merely an illusion. Thus, we wish you pleasant dreams. www.beyondtheveilradio